Lawwin Media Network.
Bringing to you the most relevant content across all platforms.
Business, legal, politics, health, lifestyle, and entertainment.
Your source for all the news and updates in the greater Houston community from Texas and all over the world.
Get informed and empowered with Lawwin Media Network.
Good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. We welcome you to another episode of our podcast today. It's live broadcast by stream.lowin.net. We're also live in YouTube, we're live in Facebook, we're also live in Twitch, but we're also live in Apple, Google, and in Spotify. This is Beyond Health and Wellness. We are season 2 and we are now in episode 11. The title of our podcast today is Reunited in Purpose, Friendship, Leadership, and the Light We Carry. We welcome you to the Empowering Conversations with Dr. Rich. I'm your host, Dr. John Rich Levine, and today's episode is very special to my heart. It's not just special, it's personal, but it's also very purposeful. Because today I'm joined by someone who's seen me through textbooks, night shifts, in fact, even diaper bags. We talk about that too, and operating room scrubs and soul deep conversations, including chanting in the woods. A brilliant clinician, a fierce leader, a devoted mom, one of my dearest friends, and I call her mom. So don't be disturbed when I call her mom. It's just because of some form of family affiliations and the closeness that we have working together and being together in school, getting have the same training. Today is our special guest, Dr. Amelia Terencio.
Hey, how are you? It's so
Thank
good to see
you.
you.
Good to see you too. Thank you, Mom, for Dr. Amelia for coming to my show.
My
And we have 21,000 followers and viewers for us
wow,
all over the world.
everyone.
There are followers in Dubai, in
Wow,
Abu Dhabi, in Saudi Arabia, particularly in Riyadh. We
wow.
have followers and viewers in Europe, in the UK, in Paris, in France, Italy. I'm going there in Budapest in September.
I
We'll
love
see you guys there in Hungary on September 15 and 16. So we have those kinds of people. But most of our followers are from the Philippines, where I come from.
Hey, everybody.
Manila. Yes, in Manila, in Cebu, and in Mindanao. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. This is such an honor because you know how much I adore you. And I will tell you, I love you this much. It's past my bedtime, so that's why here I am.
Thank you, Mom. Thank you. Thank you. So let's start, okay? It's going to be long conversations.
Yes, yes. Got a lot
From
to talk about.
sleepless exam weeks to leadership discussions and all of that. We are all you'd find me. We talk about a lot of things,
Yes,
lots and lots of things. We never stop talking. But today we bring that dynamic conversation to our audience today. Oh, especially to our viewers in Texas, in Houston, particularly where I came from, and in fact, also in Wisconsin, but also from the East Coast and the West Coast. Good evening to everyone. For those who who are viewing us from the other side of the world, good morning to you. And even if you are on with your coffee or with your scrubs or you're in your in your office. Today is Friday night in Wisconsin, where I am, but it's past bedtime in Virginia, where mom is, and but you join us in this never-ending conversation of just about everything. And the
That's
first segment we have is life since then.
Well, since I'm living now in Northern Virginia. I was when you and I had our first encounter. I was living in South Florida, so I'm now living in Northern Virginia. So many things have changed. One boy graduated college, another boy is graduating college. I moved. Um, and you know that I taught for many years. I taught for 12 years while I was practicing at the same time, but I taught. That was my full-time job, and I practiced on the side. Now I'm back in the primary care arena, and it's been an interesting evolution. Let's say that it's been a very interesting evolution. Um, I'm enjoying being back in the primary care arena. Things are a little different now, though, you know?
What are you seeing? Do you see something that's interesting to talk about?
Yeah, I think you know what I'm seeing. I'm seeing that hospitalizations are it's that's like the four-letter word of healthcare, and it's disturbing because I think there is a time and a place to treat people in the community, but I also think that there's a time and place to be hospitalized. And what's more upsetting is not only when you send them to the hospital, the condition in which they are sent back home is it's very disturbing. You know, back in the day, if you had a blood, malignant blood pressure in the 200s with a systolic of 200 and a diastolic in the hundreds, you were admitted. You were placed on a drip. You were put in the ICU for a couple of days till we figured out what was going on. You know, today it's like a 6-hour ER stay and out you go. And it's a little disturbing. I think in the advent of how healthcare is evolving and how much we want to stay away from hospitalizations, I think that sometimes we put the cart before the horse and we don't see the bigger picture. And it's a little frustrating on the provider end.
Wow, wow. There's a question here. That's for you, mom. It
Mhm.
says, "What made you go back to the healthcare arena, coming from teaching?"
Well, I never really left per se. I was doing more of a kind of like a private approach to healthcare. Um, what made me go back is because I really was very um, eager to see what was happening. You know, teaching it is one thing and doing the private care is another thing. But when you're really out in the mix, I think you can bring a lot more back to the educational environment. And I really honestly I missed although teaching hands down has been one of the most favorite things I've ever done in my nursing career.
Yeah.
um, I did miss the 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 kind of hustle and bustle of taking care of patients steadily on a daily basis. So that's what pulled me back. I think it's like the mafia, you know, you can never get out of it.
Yeah,
So
yeah. It's
it's
like wherever you go, it's
just
there, right?
when you think you're going out, they pull you
It's
back
in the
in.
blood.
But I love seeing patients, and I have the unique privilege of doing primary care in people's homes. It's mostly for people who can't get out, or who have difficulty in getting out, and I go to their homes. So it's a whole other like concept as far as how you see a patient, because I think when you see them in the office, it's everybody's on their best behavior, they smell good, they look good, everything is, yeah, I'm doing great, I'm following my diet. When you're in the house, you get to see that, you know, they have a bag of Necco wafers sitting there and a package of Skittles, and not so much that they, you know, that's why your A1C is 11, you know. So it's an interesting perspective when you're in their environment, and I like that.
What what strategies or programs do you see that are working in these kinds of healthcare environment in the community?
Well, I think the important thing, it's a relationship, right, that you have with your patient. So I think consistency, and honesty are very important in the mix, because if you're consistent in your care delivery and you're consistent in what you say and you follow through and you're honest with your patients, they really respond to that, because then there's a trust that is built. And I think that is the basis for everything in any aspect of our lives. If you can be consistent, you can be honest, and you can be present, that's all you really want, right?
I have observed the same thing. It's an integrity thing. If you're not, I think if they don't see you doing the same or having the same kind of lifestyle that you are promoting, they tend not to believe in what you're
Right.
saying.
Yeah, and I think I honestly believe that even the hard subjects, like, for example, I had a patient today, 91-year-old, eh, the end of life process is happening, and we had to have this frank discussion that he's ready for hospice.
Yeah,
And I'm like, that doesn't mean that this is the end of your life. You're just at the end of the disease process, and there's not anything else that we can do for you. So I want you to have quality of life and hopefully a little quantity, right? So those are hard discussions, but I think when you're honest and you say how you feel with your patient, as they're a human, not just a number or a medical record number, I think that becomes very personal for them. And you have that authenticity in your relationship. And I think
yeah,
it goes a long way.
yeah. I have this story about a CRNA, so anesthesia provider.
Hmm.
They pre-admit in testing. They do that before the patients go to surgery,
Right.
and then they tend to see patients that are not medically optimized to go through surgery, and so it gets canceled. So there's some kind of a politics that comes in as far as the hospital is concerned, because we really want to serve this patient population, and
Sure.
yet they don't qualify, so they get canceled. So now the discussion comes into, now like for example, we have a 92-year-old uh, female, and we are going to have a cataract surgery.
Right.
Very simple, very easy, quick,
Right.
but it is surgery. And now we need a cardiac clearance for other comorbidities, right? So, but if there's no cardiac clearance, could it be cleared? Are we going
Exactly.
to do the surgery?
No, but I think, and again, I think that's the whole thing that people don't realize. You have to look at the risk benefit ratio in
Yeah.
everything that we do. Is this going to really change her life? Like, if you do surgery on somebody who's 92, there better be a damn good reason that you're doing that. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a nilly-willy thing. I always tell patients, we're machines, right? And your machine is 90 years old. You gotta need maintenance every now and again, right? But if you've abused that machine for 90 years, it's not much I can do for you? And it kind of brings a little bit of laughter, but it also makes them think. And it's not as threatening as if to say, you're 90, you lived a really hard life, and you played a little too hard. We're not going to do anything here. But
Yeah.
I think sometimes when you soften the delivery of what is actually factual, it makes it a little bit more palatable for the patient. And
No, I agree, and it's like there is. I've heard. So okay, you're not going to do that surgery because of this 92-year old patient, and there are other comorbidities. But your surgery is going to be cataract. So that means that this 92-year-old lady can't see very well,
right.
and they may not live very long, but at least at that portion of their lifetime, you give them some clarity
I
in life.
agree, exactly. No, I agree. That's what I'm trying to say. You have to outweigh the risk benefit. And I mean, simple things that you don't think about when you're new in practice. Like, you have an MS patient who has some coronary artery disease going on, right? So, well, you think LASIK might be a good idea. Okay. But she can't walk as quickly, and pees on herself. So she has MS and she can't really walk well. And now she's peeing. So guess what? Now she's going to slip and fall, right? So maybe we need to do something else. And I think that's the big thing. I think that you have to be creative today, in particular, because of all the constraints that we have to practice within. Um, and you have to really think outside the box on how you're going to treat your population.
Yeah.
And then unfortunately, or fortunately, I do not. Everybody's different. You know this better than anybody. You can have 7 Terps waiting for you in the OR, right? Everybody's going to be very different. Same diagnosis, but
Yeah.
everybody's going to be super different.
Yeah.
And I think that's what is missing now in the cadence of how we take care of patients. You can have 7 MIs, all 7 will be different. Same diagnosis, just a very different way of how you're going to handle the case. And I think that that's what people forget, that we have to pay attention to. We're not machines, we're not the cutouts, the
No,
cookie cutouts. We're all different.
we
And
just look like we're machines and use like
exactly,
we're machines, but we're not.
exactly. How you're going to present and post present for a situation is going to be very different from me. And I think we lose that in the mix now, again, because of the constraints of practice.
Right. I'm loving this conversation already. Now, Mom, even with all the evolution that you have, you've stayed grounded on purpose,
Yeah.
and that's what today is about, like leading with a heart, but living fully as well, especially on the in the passion and calling that we're in. Tell me stories about, you know, since we've talked about, and I always refer our conversation to the term I said, when things are bad, I go chanting in the woods for their demise and things. Tell me anecdotes and stories that you have since.
I will tell. Well, I have to tell that story. One class that Dr. Rich and I were taking together, the teacher had come back and all of us got a failing grade. The whole cohort, all 25 of us got a failing grade. So I'm like, we're all like whispering to each other on typing to each other because our classes were online. So I said, all right, I'll be the one. I was always the mouthpiece. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna call her and I'm gonna find out what we did wrong and how we can correct this. And of course, like we're all desperate. We're like, oh my God, like what are we doing? Nobody understood what was going on. And of course, Dr. Rich comes back with, she better figure it out because I will go into the woods and chant for her demise. So now every single time somebody doesn't do something right, and I'm like, okay, I'm going in the woods and chanting for their demise. Or I'll even tell my kids that, don't let me go in the woods and chant for your demise. But it just makes me like every single time, like literally, I will be in the middle of thought and I'll think of that and I just start laughing and people think I'm
Shit.
insane. But it makes me
It's
laugh.
a therapeutic
I mean,
intervention.
that was 11 years ago. I still laugh at that line, but it's funny. But I think the whole approach to being a long clinician, I think that the biggest thing is you cannot take yourself so seriously. What we do, yes, take seriously, but yourself as a clinician, I mean, I think it's okay to admit that you're wrong. I think it's okay to say you don't know. That's the biggest thing. If you don't know, go find out. Go get help to
Yeah.
find out. And I think it's also important to acknowledge when you do a good job, not to the world, to yourself. No one cares. The patient cares. You care. But I think that humor is a very huge part of my practice, um, because I think with humor, it kind of softens a lot of things and it makes people feel connected. Now, I'm not talking about being a stand-up comedian with your patient, but I am saying I don't think in the 42 years that I'm practicing, I do not think I have ever walked in a room and said, "Hi, I'm Dr. Amelia Trenzio, and so can you tell me what's happening?" It's always like, "Hey, how you doing? What's going on today?" Like, why do you need me to be here today? And I think that patients seem to be much more receptive. I think it's an important lesson to teach students as well, that when you walk into the room, I always tell them 2 things. When you walk into the room, understand that that's another person in the bed, not a diagnosis. and you have to learn to command your space. You are the nurse. No matter how much they Google, that does not take the place of your education and your understanding of what's going on. Dr. Google does not exist, but you do. So
Yeah.
you have to learn to command your space and meet them head on with their questions. I think it's very, very important that healthcare with your patient is a shared journey, but somebody's got to take the lead. That doesn't mean you have to be the boss. Nobody wants to be bossed around. I don't want to be bossed around.
No.
But when you lead, that's a whole different area. When you lead, you are taking the people with you and hopefully letting them surpass you in their understanding of how they're going to navigate the rest of their life. Same thing with your students. You know, you want to, oftentimes I'll hear, oh, I want to be just like you. I'm like, no, you don't. You want to be better than me. That's my job, is to make you better than me, you know?
Yes.
So I think that it's really important that when you lead, you realize that the responsibility is to serve with your leadership, not to boss people around and be in charge. But leaders don't need to be in charge. Leaders need to lead people and lead
Yeah.
the pack.
Bring them to where they are. I'm
Exactly.
loving this discussion, Mom. We are live today, ladies and gentlemen. We are here with Beyond Health and Wellness, Season 2, with our conversations with Dr. Rich, and our guest today is Dr. Amelia Terengio. We are going to talk about leadership and all of that you've heard in this podcast. We will be right back after a few reminders.
In a world filled with fleeting moments, there's beauty waiting to be captured. My name is Christian, and I specialize in immortalizing your most precious memories. From elegant weddings to vibrant events and timeless portraits, I'm here to make every moment unforgettable. Let me tell your story through the lens. Contact me today and let's create magic together.
And we are back. This is Beyond Health and Wellness, Season 2 of our live broadcast. We are live at stream.now, stream.lowin.net. We're also live on YouTube, we're live on Facebook, we're live on Twitch, we're live in podcast platforms like Google, Spotify, and Apple. So if you follow us and you have questions, please bring us your questions or give us some experiences, your stories. We're happy to acknowledge them. We have 21,000 and growing followers and viewers of this podcast alone. So make sure that you say hi in your, if you can also come join us in the replays, that will be good. Give us some hearts, some emoticons, some icons, whatever you can do to engage with the podcast. We'll be happy to acknowledge you in this platform. We are going to talk about dual situations when you have a different role, but you're also a leader in that context. And what a very great guest that we have today, because she is all of this: mom, leader, and human.
Yeah.
Mom, talk to us about all this and what do you think about this dual identity that we have?
Well, I think it's important. I have always believed, and back in the day when I was a young undergraduate student, um, I went to City University of New York for my undergraduate degree at Lehman College, and I remember the faculty was very precise on explaining to us that it was important that we acknowledge that we were humans first, and then we were the nurse. So it was interesting to learn. Back in that day, we didn't even have gloves or standard precautions at that point. But I remember them saying, you're a human first, and things are not always going to sit well with you, or you may not understand a certain approach to something. um, Acknowledge that. And there's going to be things that you think are gross and you don't want to do. You need to acknowledge that this is making you sick. It's okay, because you're human first. And I think from that, I learned that patients are human too. They're not just a diagnosis. And you're not dealing with just a diagnosis in the bed. You're dealing with a human. And we're human, they're human. That's the biggest commonality that we have, and you have to go from that. I think that that's super important to understand that while you have your worldview and your perceptions of things, so does that person that you're taking care of, or those people that you're taking care of, and you have to meet somewhere in the middle, and that opens the floodgate to good care.
Well, personal, let's say family, as a parent, as a mom. So you got those kinds of responsibility. You got to lead in that perspective as well. Now
Hmm.
you going to see, maybe they have the same problems, but they're not your family. Now they are now what other people, if you would.
Right.
You're going to perform probably about the same level of quality to both of this.
Of course. I think, I will tell you, I see my own evolution going from a very young nurse who thought, she was all that in a bag of chips, to getting my master's degree, becoming a nurse practitioner, then going back and my doctorate degree. And in between that, having children, it changes your perspective. For me, it did anyway. I think I became a little bit more tender, as far as we have to walk the fine line between getting overly involved and staying professional, right? But I think that when you have a child, at least for me, I'm not speaking for everybody, your heart sees things a little bit differently, um, and it becomes I think you just become a more feeling human being when you're taking care of somebody. For me, that's how it felt for me. Um, and I think you see things in a different perspective because now you're in a different role, but it's a caring role. As a mother, you're not a nurse, but you're caring. You're still caring for this person who now is a part of you, right? So when you go into a room and that's in you now, you're like,
Yeah.
hey, this is a real person. I have to be a little bit more aware of that. So I think, yeah, the role of mom has changed me, um, how I see things and how I even approach things. I often tell my students all the time, no matter what, just say hello. Say hello and smile. It could be the guy, that's just delivering pizza to one of the units. It's a really nice thing to just be kind. And I think that that's something that my children, becoming a mother, has taught me, that kindness goes a very long way in
Yeah.
this.
That's good. That's good. I remember my own personal experience when I was young, and we were in the operating room, and I thought I was strong. When you're young, you tend to change the world, and I'm very strong. So I stood there, and it was fine. And then the next case, I realized later on that they lifted both my legs. So I said, "Why are you lifting my legs?" And then they said, "You fell down
Ah,
at the sight of blood." And so I
no,
thought, why am I going to work in the operating room if I pass
no,
out?
it's funny that you say that because I still remember my first patient that passed away, and I know her name. I could tell you what she was wearing, her admission diagnosis, and the day that I was taking care of her. I was a nurse for 3 weeks, and I went right from college into the ICU. And she came in with chief complaint of lower back pain, and she had renal failure. And I worked on her all day. She was getting, volume expanders and stuff like that. And it was 3 o'clock, and I kept her alive all day. And I just sat down to write notes because back then we wrote notes. And her alarm went off, and I go into the room, and she's just getting, her heart rate was like 90, 40, 0. And we, called a code. And I remember this as clear as I could tell you the uniform I was wearing. We were in all whites back then. And I just started to cry. And I just cried and just kept crying. My boss literally had to take my shoulders and walk me out of the room because I was just bawling. And all the other nurses were like, "Oh, that's so cute," And then she sat me down. She's like, this is going to happen to you every day, possibly. Are you ready to deal with this? I said, I am. I said, I think I'm just tired and frustrated. I worked so hard. Like I was very confused at like, how could she pass away? I did everything right, and I was 22 years old. I couldn't buy a clue. That's how dumb I was. And I'll never forget that day. I went home and I just cried myself to sleep. No, but got up that next morning and I was like, okay, I can do this. I want to do this. I want to make a difference. And that's the whole thing. I think if you go into it every day with the idea that you want to make a difference, even now after 42 years of doing this, I want to make a difference.
Yeah.
You know, I
But
think
it's different now because you really made a difference along the way. Like for now, let's say you are doing surgery in the operating room, you open, you fillet a patient's body, and then after that, a few minutes after that, you're eating your lunch.
right.
It doesn't matter anymore.
But no, it's sad because I think about back in the day, like all this precaution stuff. Like I remember going into an isolation room with my coffee and my bagel in the morning and eating like on their bedside stand. I would never do that today. But I didn't know any better back then, and neither did anybody else because it was so long ago. But like today, oh my God, I would never do that. And did you always wash your hands back then? Maybe not. Today, that's all you do all day. This
Yeah,
is do it all day long. Yeah, my hands are raw. But like again, that's the evolution of practice
right,
too.
right.
And how we teach now is very different how I was taught back then. It's a very different kind of approach. I mean, I want to ask you this. Do you feel that things change during and post COVID, right? But
Yeah.
I'm finding that I'm getting a little less tolerant of using that as an excuse at this time.
Oh, me too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. I feel the same way. It's just like, okay, it was a rough time. I get it. And now it's not rough. Let's get back to the basics of what we were,
I
you know.
was I was thinking you were going to say, let's get back to the woods to chant.
Yes, I agree. Let's go
I
back.
always say if you have our healthcare system is dying. It's broken. It's dying. It's what we have. If you have something, if you have a better, speak up so we can help. Solve this. We can help.
But it's funny because David, that's my younger son. He is graduating with a finance degree, and he had asked to quit because he's going to be working in some kind of, I don't even understand what he does, but he's going to do something in with healthcare investment bank. I don't know, but it's something. And I was trying
Maybe
to,
merging and acquisition.
I have no idea. So I said to him, so I was trying to explain to him about like, how it works for with Medicare and Medicaid, and if you're readmitted in 30 days for the same hospital, even if you have a different diagnosis, payment doesn't happen. And I was explaining to him how broken things are, and he was like, literally with his mouth open, he's like, this is really bad. I said, that's why you have to stay healthy. And I, even now at this stage, I make sure that every day I exercise. I get up at 4:30 in the morning. I hit the gym at 5 o'clock before work because I think it's so important to have a healthy routine so that when you do go out there, number one, you stay healthy. Number two, you are walking advertisement of what health is. And more importantly, it's also for your head. I think it's super important that you have some kind of outlet to
Yeah.
be able to get the stress of what we have to deal with day in and day out away.
Right. Would you believe I run marathon? I run a marathon at least once a month, once a year.
God bless you. See, running for me, not so much. I feel like my brains are jiggling, but I do like to do the circuit training. And I do Pilates once a week. I circuit train 4 days, and I
That's
Pilates one day a week. You got to keep bendy. You know what I'm saying? You
yeah,
can't be stiff. I got to be like Gumby. I got to be bendy. So I
yeah.
think that's important.
And I agree. And in fact, that is what I'm going to be talking about in my speaking engagement at Becker's meeting
Really?
in Chicago. I'm going to be talking about the future of social determinants of health, where community hospitals fit. So, although I am in a big medical center, we do have connections with community hospitals that are attached to the system, and it is important that we share about what is the future of social determinants of health, and we're talking about that. And I feel that leadership plays a very important role in trying to utilize what you have and the resources given to you, or the resources available to you in those locations. What do you think about that?
I think you're spot on with that. I think first of all, the community hospital is a very huge part of healthcare in most communities. Coming from South Florida, I will tell you that was the staple of healthcare, you know. There were two community hospitals, one on the east side, one on the west side of the town that I lived in. And you know, that was the place to go for help, your health, you know, if there was a health issue, right? um Many of the physicians and nurse practitioners that practiced in that area were affiliated with these hospitals. So I think you have to have a community hospital that understands their community.
Yeah.
And I also think that it is their responsibility to be, not only have the resources for them, but to be resourceful
Yes.
in getting patients to use those institutions. And I think it's a huge responsibility of the community hospital to be good at what they do. You know, you can label yourself a trauma center or a great birthing center, but I think that you can't only franchise those things, because once they're admitted, it's what goes on in the rest of the hospital. Because it's great when you're having a birth and everything's going well, but as you know better than anybody else, births can go south really quickly, and
Mhm.
then we're in a whole other arena. So you may have a great birthing center, but how is your ICU? How
Yeah.
is your med surge floor? And that's your meat and potatoes of healthcare, right? So I think community hospitals tend to forget that although they can have a specialty in some area, like, you know, we're a trauma one center, that's great, but what happens to me when I get admitted? After I get hit the ER and I'm classified as a trauma, what happens in your trauma ICU? What happens on your floor? What happens in your rehab situation? And I think that's where the community hospital needs to get better. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think so too. It's the resources, really, the resources first of all of the providers.
Hmm.
If you have one, you're a lucky,
Right.
community. It's very minimal, if not non-existent. Plus, okay, so I have, let's say, what, a urologist in my community, and well, where are the patients? Patients is out there. All now you need transportation because they
Right.
don't come to you, or you need to go to them.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think there's a lot of, because of the aging of our population, I think that people forget that not everybody has access to the internet and to telehealth, right?
Yeah.
They're like, well, let's do a telehealth visit since they can't get out. That's great. But if you have somebody who doesn't have a cell phone or doesn't know how to use a computer, that telehealth visit might as well not even exist, right?
Yeah.
So I think that we have a huge responsibility to make that wraparound care happen, and provide those resources for people so that we can lessen the burden on our own resources.
Yeah.
So I think that that's an important thing that sometimes I think is missed,
It's missed or probably
not
ignored
thought.
or neglected.
Yeah, right,
Not part of the priority.
right, right.
Here is a question from one, well, this is a comment from one of our viewers. That's so powerful. Some people, especially mentors, don't want their learners or students to outwit them or be better than them. Wow.
No, I think that's a really good comment, Mimi, but I will tell you the truth. I think if you have a leader or an educator who doesn't foster, their staff or their students to be better, then you're really not a good leader. I'm being honest with you, or a good educator. I think the whole idea is to present yourself as somebody who also is willing to learn and doesn't know everything, because I don't know everything. And I think when you can say, you know what, I don't know that, but let's look it up together, or let's find out together, I think that empowers you because they trust you. And I think it also empowers them to be like, wow, I can still learn. Look at her, she's still learning. So I think it's a win-win on both
Yeah,
sides of the
yeah.
fence.
And here's a question: what motivated you to enter or choose the healthcare field?
Well, that's an actually funny story. I don't know if it's funny to you, but it's funny to me. When I was 5 years old, I knew that I wanted to do something in healthcare. Um, I would go, like, in a hospital and be like peeking in to see what was going on and stuff like that. And honestly and truly, no joke when I say this, it was electrifying for me. I felt like, wow, this is what I need to do. And I never once said I wanted to be a nurse. Not one time, not ever. And then when I went to high school, I received a scholarship from the state of New York for nursing. And I was like, well, I guess I'm going to be a nurse. And that's how I became a nurse. And I don't regret it. I think nursing has been a very good career move and very good to me. And I've been very good to nursing. So I think it was a win-win for everybody all the way around. And it couldn't be that bad. I've been doing it for 42 years. So here I am. And that's how I became a nurse.
No regrets for you.
No, absolutely no regrets. I think it's a wonderful career. However, I don't if you're going in for the fashion or the money, not the career for you. Um and oftentimes I think it's a little better now, but I think overall the work-life balance issue, it can be rough.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
can be rough because 12-hour shifts turn into 15-hour shifts, and it's a kind of iffy work-life balance, but it works.
It works. It works. We'll talk some more about work-life balance when we come back. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Beyond Health and Wellness Season 2. We are at our episode number 11. And our special guest today is a dear friend, classmate, and colleague, Dr. Amelia Terencio. We'll be talking some more about that in our remaining segment. But we're live here in Lawin stream.lawin.net. I could never remember.
Lowen.net. There you go.
There you go. Give me 5 years, I'll memorize that. But we're live in YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, Twitch, Google. What else? Apple. We're everywhere. So just follow us and give us a emoji, give us some hi and hello and all of that. And your questions, we will take care of them. We'll acknowledge you. We'll be right back after a short reminder. And we
And
are
we are
back. We are back on our last segment. This is a wonderful conversation with Dr. Amelia Terencio. We are going to talk about your energy, Mom. How do you refuel? I see you're looking young. You're looking beautiful. You have a lot of energy, and the way you speak projects a lot of those to our audience. Now, tell us about how do you refuel? How do you keep your energy going?
Well, I think it's like I said, I think it's really super important. I exercise every day. I take off the weekends, but I do exercise every day. I think that that's important. I eat really clean, low carb, high protein, vegetables, a lot of vegetables and fruit. Really don't drink, never smoke. Those are things, personal things for me that keep me healthy. Love to walk, love to hike. And I take time to do things that I enjoy, you know. I love to go, I love movies, and I love to read. Um, I think that's really, really important and to spend time with the people that make give you peace. I think that that's an important thing. I think anxiety is something that I am very prone to. And so I make it a point to kind of try to balance that and avoid that as much as I can. Work is enough anxiety. I don't need that in my personal life. So and it is, work is anxious. It causes a lot of anxiety. And I think sleep is important. When we sleep, we clean out our brain. That's how we detox our brain. So I think it's really important that you try very hard to get at least 6 hours of sleep at a night, and that means it took me a very long time. The past 18 months, I have been very cognizant of no phone in the bedroom, no television in the bedroom. I try to get to bed at a decent time. I don't like to go to sleep later than 10 o'clock because I get up at 4:30 in the morning. So I want to get enough sleep because I got to tackle the day. And I think it's people say, oh, as you get older, you need less sleep. That's a lie. You need the same exact amount of sleep. I think as you get older, it's really important too to eat much better because you can't lose those pounds like you used to. And it's a lot easier to fall into bad habits as you get older because you're like, oh, I don't care anymore. Who's going to look at me, or whatever the case may be. And that's not the case. It's like, who's going to look inside you? I actually had to have the calcium CAT scan, to see what's going on with the plaque.
Yeah.
And that's the test you want to fail, and I got a 0. I was very happy, and then my cardiologist said to me, well, that doesn't show the soft plaque. I'm like, I don't want to hear that. I got a 0. I'm very happy. Okay. But I just think it's really important that you take time to enjoy the things that make you
Yeah.
happy and
Yes.
the people that make you happy and calm. Because if we don't, no one how you've been practicing a long time too. Have you heard anybody when they were dying and you were holding their hand? Did they ever say, gee, I should have worked more? No, no, that has never come out of one person's head. It's always been, I regret that I didn't spend more time with my family. I regret that I didn't take more time for myself and go on vacation or just be be with myself and enjoy the simple things. So I've learned over the years, I don't want to be that person. I want to be able to say, I lived a very balanced life. And I think that's the key to anything, balance. And balance is hard, but you can get there. It takes time. Every day you dedicate a little time to making your life balance. I think that's important.
I agree. It takes time. It's not a overnight thing.
Oh, it's a process. Oh my God, please. I'm almost 100 and I'm still trying to figure it out, But it's definitely a process. It's definitely a process. But I think if you start, like for the youngsters in the audience, I think if you start in your 20s and you really dedicate yourself to taking time for yourself and doing the right thing, it's going to be a lot easier for you as you grow old and as you evolve as a human to know that your self-value is really important
Yeah.
in making you a better person overall,
And that's what makes a leader, I believe, because you're a leader of yourself first before you become a leader of others.
If you can't control you, how are you going to control a room full of people or a staff of 50 or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be? So, and just remember something, people. The only thing you can control is yourself. You really can't control anybody or anything, but you can set boundaries
Yes.
and have those people agree to those boundaries and reel them in when they're not following the boundaries. But basically being a leader sometimes is like herding cats. It's very difficult. It's a very difficult process. It can be done, but it's very difficult. But if you do it, and I believe faith is a huge important part in my life. I don't care if you believe in trees. You have to have faith in something.
You
Nice.
have to believe in something. I
Yeah, I
agree.
think you have to believe in something other than yourself. I think that's grounding, and it's also very comforting at the same time. So, like, if you want to believe in a tree, then that's your thing. Go ahead. Turn to the tree when things are going crazy. And sometimes you just have to take that breath and realize that there's, something out in the universe that's better, bigger and better than we are. And sometimes you have to lean into that. I really believe that.
I like that. I like the faith part of our leadership journey or health or journey of our health, because it is important for us to know that something out there is in control. And in our previous episode, we actually really talk about energy, that energy is everything and
Oh
that
my
it
God.
affects us.
That's why I told you, when you walk into a room, the energy that, if you walk into a room, you say, "Hi, Mr. Johnson. I'm Amelia. I'm your nurse today." You know, it's not going to go well. But if you go in, "Hey, how you doing? I'm Amelia. We're going to have a good day today." That sets the tone. And I really believe that we are the orchestrators of setting the tone, whether you're a caregiver, whether you're, doing your nursing duties, or you're leading. You set the tone, and everybody will buy into that. And I really believe that. And I think it's important that you set a tone that is filled with grace,
Yeah.
that is filled with inclusivity, and it is filled with the desire to make those around you better.
Yes,
That's
because you affect them, and what you bring around
Yeah,
is it impacts the people that are around you. So
absolutely.
I think it's also in leadership. Do you notice that when we have, like, let's say, conference or a meeting for that matter, and people are sitting around the oval table conference room, and somebody comes in and you can feel a different energy.
Sure, 100%, 100% sure. You always have that one Debbie Downer in the group. That when they walk in, you're like, "Oh God." You don't want you. You definitely, as a leader, as anybody, you don't want to be that person, right? You want to be the one that brings that fresh air every time you come
Yes,
in the room.
yes,
And sometimes that can be exhausting. So that's why it's important to have all those other things, outlets, and your life. Work is a wonderful thing. It can be creative, and it can be fun, and it can be social, but you have to have that other area so you can decompress and kind of disengage from that environment, because I don't think to be on all the time is healthy either.
yeah, yeah. There is so when we talk about energy, there is frequency in energy. So it's up and down, up and down. It's not it's one straight line. It's like your sinus rhythm, right? And you like it, but if it's too much, then it's out of order. And if
Exactly.
it's also too low, then probably are dead.
Not exactly. It's not good. I
Yeah.
think the important thing is to be even, like you said. I
Mm.
think, show up all the time, the way you should show up. I think that causes a lot of less stress for everybody, including yourself. You know, um, if you're an energy filled person, and, like a poodle,
Yeah.
then be the poodle, but be the poodle all the time. It's like, for example, if you have somebody who's on Coumadin and they want to eat vegetables, you can't eat a bowl of vegetables on Monday and then not the rest of the week, right?
Correct.
So it's the same thing for you as a leader, or you as a clinician. You know, be who you are, the core of who you are, and be like that every day. Be consistent. People love when you're consistent.
Yeah.
People love that. Consistency. Don't you love consistency? I
I,
do.
I
I
do.
do.
I do.
I like to know that when I talk to you, I know I'm going to laugh. I know that there will be a point in our conversation where I'm going to laugh till I can't breathe. And that's you. That's consistent. And I want that. People want it. Just like kids. Kids want guidelines. They want consistency. They may buck you and say, "No, no, I really don't want that. I really," but they do. They really do, and they need that. It's the same thing for you as a human. You need that consistency in your practice, in your leadership, in your life to feel like you're going in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Leadership is presence, and it's what you do with that will determine where you're going and how
Absolutely.
you get there. So it's very important. And I'm loving this. Although we're getting close to our closing part of our podcast, we are live actually here in Beyond Health and Wellness. This is season 2 of our podcast, Conversations with Dr. Rich. Thank you for our to our very loyal, consistent 21,000 and counting viewers and followers all over the world. We truly, really appreciate you being with us. Our special guest today is Dr. Amelia Terencio. We are talking about different kinds of things, especially what you leave as a legacy in your leadership, both personal and outside of that, maybe professional, business, or community leadership. Your presence is very important to us. Now, Mom, talk to us about parting ways, about things as we close all these discussions on leadership, wellness, and the things that we do around that as a human being, as a person, as a practitioner. Bring us to what does the future look like to you as far as these things are concerned?
I think that as we move forward, I think that people will come to the point, because I think our health system is so off the rails or broken, however you want to say it. I think that people will come to the realization that we have to stop and realize that this is not working and people are not getting better. We're living longer, but the quality of life is not where it should be. And I think we unfortunately, I think nursing missed the mark. We had the wheel during COVID. We were driving that bus and then we let go. And I think that that was a big mistake, because I think that it was the first time that people realized how influential we are in delivering healthcare and kind of steering that ship. Um, it's funny because my children say to me all the time, "I don't understand it. The doctor's in there for 2 seconds, but you're there all day." And I'm like, "I know." I said, "It's not equitable," but they laugh. They're like, "What's the point of them?" I said, "I don't know. We're still trying to figure that out." But I think it's really, I think it would be beneficial if we all sat at the same table and figured out why this is so broken, and really have the honest to goodness conversation of, this is not working, let's fix it now. I think that's what I see. I see that within the next 10 years. I really do. I think that it is going to be quite the revolution. And I think that um, I see for leaders, true leaders, really laying down the gauntlet and saying, we can't do this anymore. That this is not, we are not in a business. People are not a business. They are humans and they're different, and we have to look at that. I think that that's where it's going to come down to.
What do you think are some potential solutions to this? Because I'm thinking, so if we look at it as not as a business, then what will happen to the business of
No,
healthcare?
I understand. I think that what we need to see in any organization or healthcare system is, I think we need to see more people who are actually on the ground in leadership positions, so that they it's more relatable. I think that there should be a separate entity where we have, the business side, of course, meet with the clinical side, so that we can both have an honest discussion about what we need, what's right, what's wrong. It can't only be the bottom line. And,
Right.
and people don't understand that. It's
Right.
unfortunate, but it can't always just be the determinant of the bottom line. And I think once people realize that, and that where business and clinical can meet, then we're going to have a real authentic healthcare situation.
Wow. I love that. And I think that's where we need to be working. Um, we have reached the end of our podcast today. Our special guest is Dr. Amelia Turin. She will be joining us and giving us some special, very important insights about healthcare and about leadership. It became to me, it is very enlightening. So, thank you very much, Mom, for being with us, and thank you to our listeners for following us consistently. I would like for you to follow all throughout the end of our season 2, and then we'll start different topics again. Join us again next week. But until then, keep showing up, keep shining, and keep choosing joy. You want to live well, you want to live fully, you want to stay beyond the expected, and come back here in our podcast, Beyond Health and Wellness. We'll be here. Thank you very much for being with us. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.